What's up guys, and welcome back to Drive Steady. In this video we're going to switch it up a bit and compare some SUVs, specifically the BMW X3 and the Mercedes GLC. If you're not familiar with my video comparisons, what I'd like to do is objectively compare these cars on paper and give my overall thoughts at the end of the video. So if you're interested in the BMW X3 or the Mercedes GLC, stick around. Of course, before getting started, I wanted to give out an obligatory thanks to all who watch our videos. We appreciate everyone's views and subscriptions. If you have any suggestions for cars that you would like compared, please send us a comment below and we'd be happy to put together a video. The BMW X3 and Mercedes GLC have been around for quite some time now. The X3 launched its new generation codenamed G01 in 2018 and is now in its 2020 model year. The Mercedes GLC launched in 2016, replacing the popular GLK model, and is now also in its 2020 model year. The new model year for the GLC has gone through a refresh where Mercedes gave it typical treatment with new-looking headlights, revised bodywork, and new interior pieces like a bigger infotainment screen, amongst many other things, to freshen up the technology in the GLC. As mentioned, the X3 debuted in 2018, so I anticipate that a refresh could be lined up for it in the upcoming years. SUVs have been the hot topic for several years, and the compact SUV market has become saturated with a lot of competition, and these two cars are typically at the top of the list as far as popularity goes. Ready to see how they compare? Let's jump into it. Let's start off with the trim levels. Both the X3 and the GLC have multiple trim levels to choose from, but in this video we'll compare the standard trims. In the X3, the standard trim is the S-Drive 30i, and for the GLC, the standard trim is the GLC 300 SUV. Just to be clear, this video will cover the GLC SUV, not the coupe version. Alright, the first spec we will compare are the engines and the transmissions. The BMW X3 comes with a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, putting out 248 horsepower and 258 pounds-feet of torque. The X3's engine is mated to the fantastic 8-speed ZF transmission that's found in most, if not all, the other models in the BMW lineup. The Mercedes GLC is equipped similarly with another 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, putting out 255 horsepower and 273 pounds-feet of torque. The GLC's engine is mated to a new transmission from Mercedes. It's the 9-speed automatic that's making its way into most of the new Mercedes models. Can you believe we're now getting close to double-digit gears in transmissions? I remember when transmissions went over 6 gears, it was a humongous deal. Now car companies are adding gears to transmissions like nothing. Anyway, comparing these two, the Mercedes edges out the BMW in both horsepower and torque categories. In the horsepower category, the Mercedes bests the BMW by a narrow margin of 7 horsepower and the torque figure by 15. Next, let's look at the weight comparison. The BMW X3 tips the scales at 3,931 pounds. The Mercedes comes in a little lighter at 3,889 pounds for a difference of a marginal 42 pounds between these two cars. Again, like horsepower, these two cars are very similar with power and weight. Now that we know the power and weight, let's talk about what those two figures affect the most, and that's acceleration. The BMW X3 accelerates from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds flat, and the Mercedes GLC in 6.1 seconds. Considering that these two cars are almost 4,000 pounds with less than 300 horsepower, 6 seconds is pretty decent. The more important thing is that these cars have a good amount of torque down low because of the turbochargers. The low-end torque helps these cars get going from a stop and should provide enough power for day-to-day driving. Now let's talk about the interior dimensions, because you're buying an SUV for more space, right? So let's find out how these two cars compare on the inside. The BMW's front headroom measures 41.1 inches compared to the Mercedes' 37.8. The X3's front legroom comes in at 40.3 inches and the Mercedes 40.8. Moving to the shoulder room, the BMW has 57.6, the Mercedes 57.3. The X3 in the rear headroom arena, 39.1 versus the GLC's 38.5. The X3's rear legroom, 36.4 to the Mercedes's 37.3. The BMW rear shoulder room, 56 inches even to the Mercedes's 56.5. Both cars can seat 5 people, and neither one has an option for third row seating. Just in case you're curious, both these cars have 2 cup holders. So the results of the interior comparison are that the BMW has more headroom and shoulder room in the front, while the Mercedes just edges it out in the legroom category. And in the rear, the BMW has more headroom but less legroom and shoulder room. It seems like your passengers in the back seats will be more comfortable in the GLC, while the driver and the front passenger will have a little bit more room in the X3. Staying on the inside, now let's see how much stuff you can fit in these cars by looking at the cargo space. The BMW X3 has 28.7 cubic feet of cargo space in the trunk, and when you fold down the rear seats, it increases to 62.7. The Mercedes on the flip side has 19.4 cubic feet of cargo room in the trunk. If you fold down the rear seats, it grows to a sizable 56.5 cubic feet. The difference between these two cars is pretty big. The BMW has almost 10 more cubic feet of cargo room when the rear seats are folded up and over 6 cubic feet when folded down. So if you're wondering, okay, I get 10 more cubic feet, what does that really mean? Well, first let me explain how manufacturers come up with this cargo space number. You take the length, width, and height of the trunk space in feet and multiply all the numbers together. Now for reference, a standard airline carry-on bag takes up to 1.43 cubic feet of space. Translate that to these cars, you can fit 6.5 more carry-on bags with the seats folded down and 4 more with the seats upright in the X3 versus the GLC. Now you probably won't be able to see out of the back window because you're utilizing every square foot available, but hey, it's something to consider. Next, let's look at how these cars compare with the exterior dimensions. The X3 measures in at 85.6 inches in length versus the Mercedes's 83.3. Moving to the width, the BMW comes in at 74.4 and the Mercedes at 74.4 as well. And finally, the BMW measures 66 inches tall to the Mercedes's 64.7. Alright, so while both cars come in at the same width, the X3 is 2 inches longer and almost 1.5 inches taller. Remember that extra interior space we were just talking about? Some of it may be because the X3 is just overall a bigger car. Okay, now let's talk about fuel economy. The BMW X3 with its 4-cylinder gets 25 miles per gallon in the city and 29 on the highway for a combined average of 27 miles per gallon. The X3 has a fuel tank that can hold 17.2 gallons of fuel. The Mercedes, on the other hand, gets 22 miles per gallon in the city and 29 on the highway for a combined average of 24 miles per gallon. The Mercedes has a fuel tank that can hold 17.4 gallons. You can see that the X3 attains better fuel economy in the city, 25 versus 22 in the Mercedes, and in combined fuel economy. So you're wondering, why would that be? The Mercedes and the BMW pretty much have the same engines with the same torque. As a matter of fact, the Mercedes has an extra gear in its transmission, so it should get better fuel economy, right? Well, let me give you a statistic that is commonly overlooked. It's called drag coefficient. Drag coefficient is basically how efficiently your car slices through the air. The X3 has a drag coefficient of 0.29, which is amazing for an SUV, while the Mercedes comes in at 0.35. The lower your drag coefficient number, the more slippery your car is, and in turn usually achieves better gas mileage. Next, let's talk about towing and payload. Even though very few people are buying these luxury SUVs for towing purposes, in the end they are SUVs, so let's talk about it. In the BMW X3, your maximum towing capacity is 4,400 pounds and the maximum payload is 937 pounds. The BMW X3 also has 8 inches of ground clearance. The Mercedes, on the other hand, has a maximum towing capacity of 3,500 pounds, and the maximum payload is 1,466 pounds. The Mercedes GLC has 6 inches of ground clearance. If you're wondering what's the difference between maximum payload versus towing, let me explain. The payload is the weight inside the car. It includes the weight of the passengers and the cargo. Towing capacity is pretty self-explanatory in that it's a measure of how much weight the car can tow. Therefore, if you want to carry more weight in your car, the Mercedes might be the right choice. But if you're looking to tow, the BMW might be the right choice. Coattailing off of the towing and payload metrics, both of these cars come standard with two-wheel drive, but both offer all-wheel drive options as well. Next is the warranty. Both the X3 and the GLC have the de facto standard warranty for German cars, and that's 4 years, 50,000 miles, whichever comes first. Now, the difference here is that the BMW also has maintenance costs included for the first 3 years or 36,000 miles. Things such as oil changes, engine filters, brake fluid, spark plugs, etc. are covered. Mercedes, on the other hand, sells you a prepaid maintenance package if you choose to buy one. They've got 3 tiers, and the one most similar to the BMW is the 3-year, 30,000 mile option. Okay, now let's talk about the topic that is probably most important, and that's price. The BMW X3 has a base price of $42,945, which includes a $995 destination and handling fee. The Mercedes, on the other end, has a base price of $42,500. These are both the standard two-wheel drive trim levels. However, as I mentioned before, you can get these cars in a four-wheel drive configuration. So here are the prices for the four-wheel drive versions. The X3 with the four-wheel drive comes in at an MSRP of $44,495 and the Mercedes at $44,500 even. In the BMW, you pay $1,550 for all-wheel drive, and in the Mercedes, it's a $2,000 even. Not bad considering that four-wheel drive used to be a much more expensive option. Next, let's look at the exterior colors available for these cars. First, in the BMW X3, you have a wide spectrum of colors going from 2 light colors in the Alpine White and Mineral White, which looks fantastic by the way, moving all the way to the more darker shades like Black Sapphire and Dark Graphite. Feel free to pause the video and check these colors out. Next, let's look at the Mercedes GLC colors. The GLC offers a similar spectrum of lighter and darker colors. However, they have a couple interesting ones in there such as Mojave Silver Metallic, and also offer special designo colors such as Cardinal Red and Diamond White. Feel free to pause the video and check out these colors. To close the video out, I wanted to talk about the styling of these two cars. Now, styling falls into a different category than all the topics I've covered so far in that it's subjective. It's really my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. The BMW is a handsome looking car. I think it's styled very well and hasn't fallen victim to the new epidemic BMW has started recently, and that's putting these huge kidney grills on their cars. On the flip side, I really like the direction Mercedes is heading in with their styling. The refreshed 2020 GLC has received a lot of cues from the new GLS, and I think it looks fantastic. I think the styling is a little more aggressive and has more of a presence versus the BMW. Not taking anything away from the BMW, but if I had to choose a winner in the styling department, it would have to be the Mercedes. Let me know what you think of these two cars and which one you would pick. These two SUVs are very similarly matched with a couple notable differences that you'll have to decide which works best for you. Otherwise, I don't think anyone could go wrong buying either one of these cars. Alright, so that brings us to the end of the comparison of the BMW X3 and the Mercedes GLC. So this was our first attempt at a comparison between two cars that aren't sports cars, so we're open to feedback. Let me know if there are certain categories I may have overlooked. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Until next time, drive steady.